I'm Sarah from Bone Boot Camp. I'd like to share with you a little shoulder and neck love. So I'm going to come down safely for osteoporosis, and I'm going to turn onto my back. If I found myself in a position where my head was up like this, that often happens if you've got a bunch of forward head syndrome going on, then I would want you to take a little something. This is just a folded up light blanket, and then you'll find that your head can stay in neutral. If you're okay with your head staying in neutral and your head being directly on the floor and your ribs staying down, that they're not way lifted off the floor, both of those things, a little pillow can really help. But I'll show it to you laying on the ground the way I am right now. So what I want to start with is a nose nod. So we're just going to get our head and our neck comfortably moving. So a nose nod is really about having first our neutral position. My feet are under my sits bones, which are in my bottom, and my pelvis is in neutral. That means I'm not super tucked with my pubic bone higher than my frontal hip bones, that I'm really more in a position where my pubic bone and my frontal hip bones are in the same plane. Now it changes for everybody, and some people it's actually a teeny bit of a tilt that it's very hard for them to get into a totally flat position, so no worries. And my ribs want to be in my body without muscling or forcing them down. My hands are by my side, and I'm just going to nod my head. And this is a very small head nod. I'm trying to think that I'm just moving the very top vertebra. For some of you, you may know that's the atlas and the axis, but that's what I'm trying to move. I'm not trying to move more, just the very top. So that was my nod, and I'm just looking for establishing that small amount of movement. And now I'm going to do circles. And all I'm looking to do is imagine that I could draw a circle the size of a tennis ball on the ceiling. So that's not very big. Again, it's a small amount of movement. I'm trying to do this without tension in my jaw, that I could still smile as I'm doing it. I'm going in both directions. I'm trying not to grip in my neck. So just a small amount of movement that gives me a sense of some freedom. The next thing I'm going to do is press my head into the floor. So in order to do that, I'm going to imagine that something was going to come, a hand was going to come and press. And as you can see when I do that, it creates tension in the front of my neck, but a good kind of tension because I'm using muscles as I do that. So I'm making a double chin, and then I'm letting go. I'm going to exhale while I do it. Somehow making that noise actually helps me from gritting and retracting. That's not what I want. Then the tension's all in here. So this little pressing your head into the floor without your ribs coming up either is a really good exercise for strengthening your neck and combating that forward head syndrome. So we just did a few of those, enough so that we know that we're kind of relaxed and still able to communicate with those muscles. Next thing is a shoulder press, and I think many of you have heard a shoulder press is another great way to combat the computer and text neck. But what I'd like you to do is just experiment with me, and if I say, press your shoulders into the ground, what do you do? Now you can probably see what I did. There's a teeny bit of flare here, and I also could feel my shoulder blades pinching together in the back. So when I did that, my chest lifted a little, and I could feel that my shoulder blades were pinching together. What I'm going to suggest is something that's a little bit gentler. Imagine you have on a t-shirt with that seam at the sleeve, and all we want to do is press the the seam into the mat. It's really with quite a bit more ease and ease in my neck. I think you can see my shoulders moving, but it's much less stressful, much more gentle. Getting my head in the right position. And I just practice that a few times, and then I'm going to hold it. And now I'm going to do those nose circles again. 2, 3, make sure my ribs are comfortable. 2 and 3. And I'm just looking to be able to do that with a little less tension. It felt really good and floaty to me, so that's what you want. The next thing we're going to do is a little bit more difficult. It requires that neck muscle that you used in the head press. Let's press our shoulder seams down first, and we're going to lift our head just a smidge off the floor. Not an inch, not even a half inch. Making sure that I use my exhale. I'm putting my hand on my ribs because I know that's my cheat. I'm going to inhale, and on my exhale, just floating my head off. So it's just enough room to stick my hand under and coming back down. So now we're really working those same muscles that combat that forward head. So again, t-shirt seam. I use that t-shirt seam, a little bit of a head press to just get myself set, then inhale, and on my exhale, a little lift. And if I can smile while I'm lifting, it's even better. And coming back down. We're not going to be able to hold this a super long time without sending tension up the back of our neck. So the idea is not how long you hold it. Shoulder seam, ribs in, back of my ribs on the mat. Pressing my head in before I lift. And you heard just a teeny, teeny exhale sound from me. And that's all I really needed. So that was 3 times. And I'm going to turn the other direction. So I'm now face down on the mat. I'm going to take my little blanket here and use it for my forehead so that I don't get all muffly with my sound and my recording. I'm going to put my hands near my chest, and we are going to do a little baby cobra. So we're going to push our pubic bone into the mat, and the fun part is, while your shoulder blades are still relaxed, we're going to exhale, push the pubic bone into the mat, and actually lift the ribs a little bit off the mat. And then with your next inhale, we're going to shine our sternum forward. We're not arching our low back, and I'm really just looking to the top of my mat. I'm not looking to crank my neck. That doesn't do me any good and isn't a great idea. So again, inhale to prepare. Exhale, push your pubic bone into the mat and lift your ribs away from the mat, almost like the beginning of a cat. And then start moving your sternum towards the front of the room and come back down. So we're giving our upper back a little bit of work, but in a really delicious way where we've already started to release some tension. So pushing my pubic bone into the mat, lifting my ribs, inhaling, moving my sternum forward. So your ribs don't even have to completely come off the ground when you do that. It's really about starting to get a teeny bit of thoracic extension. It's not a lot. We don't actually have that much thoracic extension. So the next thing we're going to do is do a seated circles. And you are welcome to grab something like a block or a bolster to sit on, or sitting flat on the ground. I'll just show you another one of the ways that I like to sit. Not everybody can do this. Sometimes the knees don't like it, but I'm getting my sits bones straight up and down, sort of like being in a chair. And of course you could use a chair. So what we're going to do is go back to nose circles. And the nose circles, the very first one is a full circle, and what we're trying to do is keep the rotations from being extreme. So let me start you off. We're going to put our right ear over our right shoulder, and I'm going to start by going forward, looking down at the floor. As I come up, I'm lifting my chin, but not excessively. I'm letting my eyes trace around the room, and I think you can see this is not an extreme circle. And then reverse. Really watching my chin, you can see that it comes up, but it doesn't really point all the way up to the ceiling. It's just drawing up the wall in front of me. And now for a little challenge, I'm going to focus on my nose. I'm going to close my eyes for this because I can get really distracted by the things in front of me. So I close down my eyes and I go to the same side to start my circle again. I'm going to start by tipping back, but now I'm going to notice my nose and ask myself to draw a line with my nose going straight up and down in front of me. So now my circle has to change a little because I'm trying to draw this circle, and I can change directions. You can change back and forth. I don't even know if it's really a straight up and down line, but I'm trying to keep circling while drawing my nose straight up and down. Just a little mind bender and a great way to just experiment with different ways to find circles that aren't extreme but really nourishing. The next thing I'd like you to do to really start freeing up that upper back is some rhomboid push-ups. So the easiest way is when you're seated and we're reaching forward, and I took a quick look at something that I have. I'm actually going to use it. I'm going to grab my half dome. Let's say you have another block. You could be holding your block. And what I'm going to do without my fingernails gripping on it, flat hands, I'm going to reach that block away from me, and I feel that my shoulder blades have gone broad. Without bending my elbows, I'm going to pull the half dome towards me. So if I go sideways, you'll get a really good view of this. So what I'm doing is I'm reaching the block away from me, then I'm pulling my shoulder blades at the bottom towards each other, and the block comes closer. You'll notice my fingers aren't doing anything and my elbows aren't doing anything. And it's called a rhomboid push-up because my rhomboids are pulling the bottoms of my shoulder blades back together again. If you think too much about the tops of your shoulder blades, you might get something like that. So trying to stay relaxed in the neck and down at the bottom of the shoulder blades where the block is moving because your shoulder blades are moving. So that is fine. And now we've really kind of freed some sense of the back of our arm up, and we're going to do one final thing to kind of release what's going on through the neck. I'm going to bring my right arm out, and you could have it down here, you could have it up here. Doesn't matter, and you could try various places. Let's say we start here. And we're rotating at our hand, external and internal, and external and internal. And now I'm going to start thinking from my elbow pit, and then I'm going to start turning from up here at my shoulder. And you'll notice that my hand is doing much less turning because I'm really putting my mind's eye right in my shoulder girdle. And then I'm going to add on. I'm going to tilt my head away from the working arm. I'm not twisted. I've just gone from neutral to the side. And I'm going to rotate just from the top of the arm back and forth. Feels a little different. I can feel more going on. I could even try it at different heights. I do feel at this height, I'm getting a different sensation. I could make it a moving little exercise. I'm going to stop where I was. I'm then going to take my fingers and start pointing them towards the ground. That's a bit of a nerve stretch, and if it's super uncomfortable, come out of it. This is supposed to be something that feels good in the end. And then I'm going to bring it down. And just notice with one nice breath, with my eyes closed, inhaling and settling on an exhale, that I do feel different on the sides. So I'm going to come out over here to the other side. And I'm just going to start with my rotations at my hand, and then at my elbow, and then all the way up here. Good. And again, I could be looking for all the different places that I can do this. And now I'll add my little stretch and rotate again. And this time all the way up here. I accidentally started with my hand, and I don't need to do that. I just want to focus right now on the arm at the top. That's the important part. And then, interesting, this side isn't as tense as it was yesterday. That's a win. Fingertips down, reaching my palm longer since I'm not getting too much of a twinge. And then coming down, just sort of shaking it out, feeling really good. And come back to Bone Boot Camp's YouTube channel. I've got a lot more coming.